So morning everyone, I'm Leona, as most of you now know, and today's toolbox talk is around, we're talking about the environment and waste management. So by the end of today's talk, we will have some insight into why we manage waste. We'll have reviewed the CITB Golden Rules of Waste Management. We'll have considered ground contamination management. We'll consider what it means to be a considerate neighbour, and we'll have a look at animals in the construction environment. So this is where I'm going to pose the question to you guys. So why do we manage waste?
For the environment?
Yes, for the environment, absolutely. Is that Hamish?
That is.
Hi, Hamish. Do you want to expand on that a little bit?
So to manage, if you're managing waste, then you're going to have less costs that end up going to waste, less materials going to waste. Yeah, better for businesses, better for the environment.
Absolutely. In terms of the environment, I think you're absolutely right. It helps us in the immediate sense in terms of you working in a safe, orderly environment, but also for the future of us as we grow old and age in our environment, and for the younger people coming through, that we're contributing to preserving the environment for future generations. So it's twofold, isn't it, in terms of the environment? So yeah, thanks, Hamish. And you've touched on costs, which I think is the next point. And you're absolutely right. The more waste has an impact across the supply chain, and that ultimately has an impact on us as a company being able to be competitive and get future contract. Because the more we waste, obviously some waste is appropriate, but the more we waste without thought, the more costs will spiral. And that goes across all the different disciplines that work within a construction project. So it's not just us, it's everybody's responsibility. Does anybody else have any thoughts on that, or wants to suggest why we manage waste?
You say reputation, I could say that.
Yeah, can you see them coming through? So we've got, so the next one would be accreditation. Now, I don't know if you're aware, but the accreditation that'll spring to mind is CHAV. So we have CHAV accreditation. We have accreditation associated with Wilmot Dixon, which is construction line. And we have one that's associated with our contracts that we have with Vistra, which is CQMS. Now, for all those three accreditation schemes, we have to have the CQMS and construction line in order to secure contracts with those particular contractors. So we have to evidence that we are considerate of the environment and that our practices are that we're acting out our considerations. So it's not just enough to have a policy statement. We have to be able to evidence that we're having these conversations with you and that our work is considering waste management and the environment. So without the accreditation schemes, we don't have the reputation, which is next, and we don't have the ability to win those contracts. So collectively, with us in the background, and obviously you guys are the important guys out there doing the work day to day, but collectively what we do and how we behave on site enables us to get accreditation schemes, to maintain a reputation and then secure contracts. So obviously from a future point of view, that gives us all some job security, because we know that hopefully those contracts will keep coming through for us. So the CITB have some golden rules of waste management, which, because these should feature in your site inductions, again, I thought I'd bring this question to the wider group. And it's not rocket science, although they're called the golden rules. What do you think makes up those golden rules? And I think from memory, there's five of them. Does anyone want to hazard a guess?
Waste separation.
Yeah, that features in it. Yeah. Anybody else?
I ain't got a clue.
What would you say is a golden rule of waste management, whether it's CITB or not? In your practice, what do you think is a golden rule?
I just put it in bin.
Put it in. Okay. Any bin?
Yeah, I just put it in a bin. Everything goes in a bin.
Okay. before you put things in a bin, do you think, could I reuse it? Could I?
Some stuff I might reuse.
Say again? I think someone just volunteered.
Somebody said something.
They did.
Was it recycling? Is that what they said?
It was. So yeah. So the first golden rule. The thing is with these kind of questions, often the practice is really often elements of it will be embedded in what you already do. The first thing we need to think about is preventing waste in the first instance. So just being considerate of our materials, making sure we're planning effectively. And again, that's a team approach from how James plans for the supplies that we need, when he does his background work, and also when you guys are out there and you're planning what supplies you need to get your task done that day. So prevention with anything is always better than the cure. Then we're going to think about reusing and recycling. Now, I've illustrated these two together because even though they're listed separately in the golden rules, I think they overlap significantly. So if you can reuse items safely, then do so. And if you can recycle what you can't reuse, then do so. So I know that some sites have segregation of waste, and that will be to help recycling, but other sites just have general waste and the recycling or the segregation happens off-site. And some of that will relate to the waste management contract that the contractor has. So anyone we work for will purchase a contract for waste disposal. And this comes back to what we were saying in the last slide. So if they've got a contract for waste segregation and we don't, and we're working on their site and we don't comply with that, they will be fined. And then there's a ripple effect to that, or charged rather. But equally, if the contract that the builder has is that it all goes into one skip and they separate off-site, then they'll pay more for that because obviously there's more involved in that segregation. So for us, we need to be thinking, we'll prevent in the first instance, we'll reuse and we'll recycle. But this is in the context of you as electricians. Obviously, electricians have a different waste consideration to your ground workers, to your bricklayers, etc., etc. And then the last 2 points are to recover and dispose. So the recovery is send what can't be recycled for energy recovery. So again, I think that overlaps with recycling or repurposing waste. And then the last resort is to dispose of it. There's always going to be a certain amount of our waste that goes to landfill. But if we can be considerate and reduce that, then that's the best thing for us to consider. So then we look at our ground contamination, and this is, so our ground contamination relates to leaks, chemicals or oils. It is a major issue in construction. I would hazard a guess that this probably relates to other operatives on site rather than electricians, because as far as I'm aware, in the context of electrical installation, our use of liquids and fluids is minimal. But nonetheless, we have a role to play because we all contribute to the state of a construction site. So it's a major issue across construction. It relates to accidental release of oils and chemicals. That can be on a large scale or it could be small scale. It has a lasting impact on the environment. Some of the oils and chemicals that can leak can seep into the ground and be discovered in many years' time, or they can have an impact in the immediate sense there and then. And as with anything, prevention is key. So how we store our equipment, how we move and operate around site, how traffic operates around site, all contribute to preventing this kind of incident happening, and we all have a role. The main thing for you guys is that you attend your site induction and that you know where your spill kits are, so that if there is a spillage that you've done or somebody else has done, you contribute to minimising the risk of that. If a spillage happens, then the first thing to do is to alert the site manager, make sure they're informed, and start securing the site. So if it's a large spill, we need to think about just kind of building a dam around it or stopping it from spreading any further. And the equipment that you need for that will be in your spill kits. Now, your spill kits will be part of the site risk assessment. So the builder will have done a risk assessment and will have appropriate spill kits for the products that are coming onto site. So our role is to make sure we know where they are and that we respond to them, whether it's a spillage of our making or a spillage that we witness. Okay. And considerate neighbour probably relates to our environment in terms of noise pollution. And we recently, this didn't relate to M&G staff, so I just really need to say that before the WhatsApp groups go mental. But there was one of our building contractors was a round robin of emails around some of the language some people were using on site. So when we're on site, you know, the varying times within the build project, you'll have maybe new homeowners on site or people that are residents to a new construction site. So they may already be disgruntled because they don't want the build to happen. So we need to make sure that we are sensitive to those kind of things. You know, we all use language differently, but I think as a general rule of thumb, if you with people or near people that are not part of your usual social group, then language should be moderated a little bit so that it's acceptable to everybody. Being considerate of the noise we make in terms of the tools we use in the activities, ordering stock to site, planning our deliveries are all useful considerations when you think about how we act and how we conduct ourselves in relation to some of the surrounding people, whether that be homeowners or local residents or businesses. As a general rule of thumb, tidy as you go. If you're having a break, you're more than entitled to have your breaks, smoke or whatever, but just tidy as you go, be considerate. And parking, again, if you haven't got allocated area for parking, I know some sites do, but not all, then just be considerate of the areas that you're parking in. So don't block driveways and entrance to buildings and so on. And then when we're thinking about how I'm sure that people are very obsessed with how you pack a skip, because everyone I meet in construction seems to have an obsession with skip filling. But make sure that's safe and able to be, you know, you're not overfilling it and you're doing it, you know, resourcefully. So that's just a bit of a gentle reminder, really, that we set the tone. We're fortunate at Martin&Gerard that we have some really good operatives that are very considerate and out there and have those professional attributes, but not all disciplines do. So we can set the tone of how we want to operate when we're out on construction sites. And this is a nice little slide because I don't know how prevalent conversations about wildlife in construction are, but I just thought I'd put this in because it is part of the CITB Toolbox Talk list. So I thought it'd be a useful reminder, really, that as humans on the earth, we do share the earth with our fellow animals, and we need to be considerate of that. But some of these animals on here are protected by law. Does anybody want to suggest which ones?
Badger.
Badger. Daz just shouted all of them from the other room. Badger, yeah? Anyone else? There we go. So I think Hamish and Daz get the gold star. Pardon? The bats, yeah, bats. Who were that?
Never mind who it was.
I've got James and Daz shouting from offices behind me. Right, so yeah, so we've got bats and badgers, great crested newts, that's the little creature in the man's hand there. Birds and their nests are protected by law. So bird nests, birds tend to nest during March and towards the end of July, that period. So we need to be mindful of that. And the other ones, the adder without a star, that's just sat there just to be a reminder that they are indigenous to the UK. They do have a poisonous bite, but rarely fatal. But
Adders are protected.
Adders are, thank you, Daz. Adders are, are they? Brilliant. Every day's a school day, so there you go. I think for us, in the context of how we work on a construction site, just be aware, particularly you know, for our newer members in the team, if you're not already aware, a contractor, when they purchase land, when they're putting their planning permission, they have to show due diligence to the wildlife in the area and on the land that they've purchased. So they will have done a risk assessment, and if necessary, they will have had an ecologist in to advise on removal or whether they can actually build in the location. So for example, you can't build within 30 metres of a badger set. So if that impacts on the build, they will have to adjust their plans. And if anybody's been watching Clarkson's farm, you'll see that it often features in some of the plans that he's doing, and that's the same for us in construction. But when we get on site, all those risk assessments have been done. So if there's any wildlife considerations that we need to take into consideration, then we will be told about that prior to us starting. However, that said, we need to be considerate of wildlife, and if you do come across anything, any wildlife day to day in what you're doing, then you need to make sure the developer knows. So tell the site manager and let Warren know, because worst case scenario, it can have an impact on the project plan. But usually it's just a case of getting the right people in to protect the animals. And then finally, just to recap, we've looked at why we manage waste. We've recapped on the golden rules of waste management. We've mentioned ground contamination management. We've considered being a considerate neighbour, and we've looked at some of the animals that can be impacted by the construction environment. Has anybody got any questions they'd like to ask?
I wish you could see the skips that are on most of the sites that we're on, Leona. There is no segregation on them.
Yes, I believe some sites. Well, I'm more than happy for you to send me a picture of skips, but I do believe segregation doesn't happen on every site. I think some developers, their contract is everything goes in a skip and the segregation happens elsewhere.
That seems like some of money for somebody to then empty that all out and reorganise the different types of waste.
I would guess, Hamish, that it's what they'll have done is weighed up the cost of when you've got segregated waste and you expect to have say paper recycling. If you've got a bin of paper recycling and one person's put plastic in it, the cost of undoing that is probably greater than sending a full skip of everything for somebody else to segregate. So it'll be a matter of weighing up the costs of the different options.
Which I expect the costs will probably outweigh the ability to look after the environment more.
I think it's not that the cost outweighs the importance of the environment. I would say it's about a balance between the cost, the progress in the build, and the environment. And they all have to be considered equally, albeit if we all sat in a room together, we'd all probably have a different perspective on it. But we have to be practical in terms of we've got to build. We're part of the construction industry. We need to build. We need to secure those contracts. We need to be competitive, but we need to recycle. So it's a balance across all of those. And sometimes it feels like you're spinning plates, but as long as we're all contributing to that, I think that's the important thing. Anything else? Great to have you all, and thank you very much for coming. And as previous Toolbox talk, the register will land in the WhatsApp group. Could you just complete it and submit?